All right, welcome to the deep dive. This week,
Yeah.
wow, you've handed us a really complex stack of sources.
A dizzying mix is one way to put it.
It really is. I mean, we've got high-stakes geopolitical analysis, some really deep cuts of music history,
Mm.
and then just enough political satire to make you wonder what's real anymore.
It's a study in extremes, for sure. So our mission, really, is to cut through all that chaos and pull out the essential nuggets.
Okay, so what are we looking for?
Well, what are the biggest, most surprising political contradictions right now? Who are the hidden figures whose cultural influence is way bigger than their fame?
Yeah, how do we square America's ideals with its, often painful and complicated reality?
That's the big one.
Okay, let's get into it. The first thing that jumped out was this bizarre political parallel. It connects Deep Purple Smoke on the Water to something called Operation Double Tap.
And that phrase, double tap, that's where we have to start. In military circles, I mean, it's
Yeah.
a terrifying term. The source's detail claims that this operation involved illegal bombing strikes. The targets were just broadly identified as drug people.
But the double tap part is the key.
It's the crucial detail. It means bombing the survivors, or maybe the first responders a second time.
Which is, I mean, in many contexts, that is considered a war crime by international observers.
It is. What's so fascinating here is how the politicians in the U.S. reacted. We saw Republican critics at first actually questioning the legality of it.
For a second, yeah. They paused and asked, wait, is this sanctioned?
And then almost instantly, they just snapped right back into line. The speed of that flip-flop it's incredibly telling.
So what's the speculation? Why so fast?
The source material suggests a call came down from what they called the Goon Squad, maybe a senior figure like Stephen Miller, or even the former president himself. Basically a reminder of where their loyalties lie.
So principle just collapses, the second alignment is threatened.
That's the mechanism of political fear.
And we should also just take a moment to acknowledge the day. It's December 7th.
A date that will live in infamy. It carries this incredible solemnity.
And you have to contrast that historical weight with the political games being played right now.
Oh, absolutely. The source material talks about the former president getting this fictional FIFA Peace Award, a joke award that was literally, quote, made up and given to us.
And they compare that to Obama's actual Nobel Peace Prize.
Right. It's the perfect example of how modern politics just swaps substance for validation. It's about creating an image of success, no matter how ridiculous the evidence is.
Speaking of ridiculous, let's move on to that informal game, reviewing the most pathetic moments from that recent cabinet meeting.
The level of sycophancy here is, well, it gives you a real aha moment about the political demands of the era.
The absurdity was just off the chart.
It really was. You had Secretary Pete Hegseth. His name was misspelled on his own place card. It said Hegethish.
Hegethish. You can't make that up.
And he's sitting there claiming it was a historic year at the Department of War for recruiting, which, flies directly in the face of all the public data. It's performance. It's not policy.
But the one that really got me was Kristi Noem from Homeland Security.
Oh, that was staggering.
She publicly thanked the president for keeping the hurricanes away.
For keeping hurricanes away, suggesting he has some, godlike influence over weather systems.
I mean, did anyone in that room actually believe that? Or was that just the price you pay to be there?
It was the price of admission. And then, to top it all off, Commerce Secretary Letnick calls it the greatest cabinet ever for the greatest president ever. It's this ritual.
Pure ritualistic praise.
It's the oxygen of the system.
But the real winner, the moment they called the most pathetic, was completely unintentional.
Right. It was the viral footage.
The footage of President Trump dozing off during that meeting,
Yeah.
his head dipping, eyes closing.
And what's so telling there is the hypocrisy it exposes. His allies are constantly pushing that Sleepy Joe attack line against his opponent.
Constantly.
But the source makes a really crucial distinction here. When Joe Biden's age became a real public issue, he chose not to run again. He basically acknowledged the discussion and stepped aside.
Okay, so the contrast is pretty stark.
It's incredibly stark. One leader steps down when his competence is questioned. The other one demands total denial from everyone, even when he's caught on video asleep on the job.
And that denial, that mechanism, it seems to drive everything. So let's move from the cabinet room to the global stage. We see that same kind of aggressive action in the headlines about Operation Southern Spear.
Yeah, this is the U.S. military's escalating campaign against drug traffickers in the Eastern Pacific.
The numbers are pretty high.
They are. The sources say 87 deaths in 23 strikes. It's intense. But the really important thing for you to see is the geopolitical risk.
Because the president suggested expanding it. Where?
Into Venezuela, to target cartel sites inside Venezuela.
Okay, and the second you suggest unilateral military action inside a sovereign nation, no matter the reason.
The implications just explode. It turns a counter-narcotics operation into a potential international flashpoint.
It raises the question of whether they're willing to risk global stability for a domestic policy win.
That's exactly.
At the same time, the power struggle is also happening in the courtrooms over these congressional maps.
Right. The Supreme Court let Texas use these new maps that heavily favor Republicans. It could net them, 5 seats?
5 seats, yeah. But it's not a one-sided thing.
Not at all. The Justice Department also sued California over maps that critics say unfairly help the Democrats.
So when both sides are so aggressively gaming the system to draw lines for their own benefit, it erodes public trust in the whole democratic process.
It makes elections feel predetermined.
And for a perfect summary of that political contradiction, you just have to look at the story of the pardoned drug trafficker.
Former Honduras President Juan Orlando Hernandez.
He was released after a Trump pardon, even though he was facing these incredibly serious charges.
Assisting drug traffickers, paving what the sources called the cocaine superhighway. The dissonance is just glaring.
So, declare a global war on drugs with one hand.
And with the other, pardon one of the war's most important facilitators. It's political expediency overstated policy. Every time.
Okay, let's shift to some of the weirder snapshots, domestic and international. We finally got some closure on the pipe bomb mystery.
We did. The FBI arrested Brian Cole Jr. in connection with the bombs placed near the RNC and DNC headquarters the night before January 6th. An important resolution.
And on a completely different note, we have to talk about Slovakia.
Oh, this is a great one. They passed a new law.
Limiting the speed of bicycles, scooters, and skateboards to 3.7 miles per hour.
Which is... that's barely a walking pace. I mean, critics pointed out that it's actually hard to stay balanced going that slow.
It's a perfect example of regulation that is totally disconnected from how people actually behave.
Speaking of reality, we had a key political bellwether, a special election in Tennessee.
Right, the Republican won 54%.
But the win wasn't the real story. The takeaway was how well the Democrat did, especially since the candidate reportedly disliked both Nashville and country music.
In the district they were trying to win.
Exactly.
Right.
And they only lost by 8 points in an area Trump won by 22.
So that suggests there's a volatility there. The Republican grip might be loosening.
It shows that local politics might be starting to decouple from that strict national loyalty. It's a fascinating insight.
Okay, that is a powerful idea. Let's pivot completely now. Let's do a deep dive into culture, and specifically these hidden figures whose influence is just so much bigger than their fame. We have to start with the late Steve Cropper.
We have to. I was genuinely shocked by the details in the source material about his impact.
He was the architect of Memphis Soul, a guitarist, a songwriter, a producer. We all know the songs, but so few of us know his name.
His credits are just foundational to American music. He wrote Green Onions for Booker T and the MGs. He wrote Soul Man for Sam and Dave.
He co-wrote Sitting on the Dock of the Bay with Otis Redding.
And In the Midnight Hour with Wilson Pickett. He was the sonic blueprint for an entire genre.
The thing that really crystallized it for me was that he's the guy playing the guitar in Soul Man, and they literally yell out his name in the song. Play it, Steve.
But his focus was always on the craft, on creating that foundation, not on the spotlight, even though he was in the Blues Brothers movie.
That focus on creation over celebrity. It leads us right to another one of these figures, Billy Preston.
A pivotal and often minimized figure. The sources really highlight his role during the Beatles' chaotic Let It Be sessions.
They were just fighting all the time. The dynamic was completely toxic.
And they bring in Billy Preston. He's this neutral party, an incredible musician, and he had such a calming presence that the other Beatles realized they should probably get along since Billy's here.
He was a non-Beatle who played keys on the album and basically saved the project.
He did. But here's the crucial, painful detail the sources uncovered. While he was on that famous rooftop concert, his image was allegedly minimized. They only showed, quote, half of his fro.
Why? Why would they minimize him?
The sources tie it directly to the racial environment of the time. The record industry was deeply anxious about racial representation.
So the presence of this incredibly important black artist was deliberately downplayed in one of the most famous moments in music history.
It speaks volumes about who the gatekeepers thought was marketable and whose influence was supposed to stay hidden.
That is just staggering. And it perfectly frames that difference between genuine cultural influence and managed celebrity.
It does.
And To quickly hit the lighter side of culture, we had that game of TV stars who tried to become singers.
A quick history of celebrity crossover. David Soul from Starsky and Hutch. Don Johnson from Miami Vice.
His daughter's Dakota Johnson, right?
That's right. And of course, David Hasselhoff, who was huge in Germany.
Can't forget the Hoff. And then the modern version, Paris Hilton, Kim Kardashian, it confirms that a star is now just anyone who could leverage reality TV into a brand, whether they can sing or not.
Which brings us right back around, full circle, to that fundamental tension, the gap between America's ideals and its often disappointing reality.
Yeah, I was reading the documentary review about the American Revolutionary War, and the host's main takeaway was just profound cynicism.
What was the cynical view?
That the whole ideological fight for freedom was mostly just a cover for the colonists' desire to keep expanding onto Native American lands.
Yeah.
Something the British actually wanted to stop after the 7 Years' War.
That is the painful truth that often gets glossed over. The fight for freedom was tied up in the desire for unchecked land grabs. And the betrayal of those ideals just got worse after the war.
How so?
British generals offered freedom to any slaves who would fight for them, a real act of liberation.
But then the British lost.
And those promises became worthless. Many of those freed slaves, including some owned by Washington and Jefferson, were rounded back up and put back into bondage.
The hypocrisy of demanding freedom while denying it to others, it's the nation's original sin.
It is. Yet, and this is the vital counterbalance, the sources insist that documents like Common Sense and the Declaration of Independence still hold this genuine, enduring power.
So even with the hypocrisy of the authors, the texts themselves still matter.
Exactly. They articulate a kind of moral North Star, an aspirational goal for human rights that, continues to drive progress even today.
It's the constant struggle between the beautiful idea of a system and the messy reality of the people running it.
And that struggle with chaos isn't just historical or political, right? It's in our daily lives. We had that great relatable anecdote about the work trip to Boca Raton.
Oh, that was perfect. The terrifying Uber ride in a storm, the airport gridlock at Fort Lauderdale, and then the hotel streets were all blocked off by a Christmas parade. Just micro-level chaos.
That anxiety is so real. But the key detail, the thing that ties it all together, is the solution.
The traveler's extreme anxiety means he has to drink apple juice before every flight.
Because he genuinely believes that the apple juice is the sole action preventing the plane from crashing.
It's a totally irrational coping mechanism.
But it's fascinating.
It really is. It perfectly shows that when the big systems, political, historical, mechanical, feel totally out of our control, we cling to these little personal irrational comforts. You can't control the president, but you can control the apple juice.
And so far, it's worked every time.
It has. So we have certainly covered a lot of ground today. We've gone from these high-stakes claims about Operation Double Tap all the way to the subtle, decades-long influence of artists like Steve Cropper.
It's been a journey.
And we can't wrap up without acknowledging the culture we're in right now. We saw the news about Taylor Swift's third documentary in a year, the Eras Tour rockumentary, hitting Disney Plus this Friday.
The saturation is just intense.
It is. And this is the perfect thought to leave you with.
Okay.
We've talked about the long-term foundational impact of an artist like Steve Cropper, whose work created entire genres, but whose name is largely unknown. And we contrast that with someone like Taylor Swift, whose every move is documented relentlessly.
So what's the question?
What does that contrast tell you of the difference between cultural influence, actually creating the foundation for others, and cultural saturation, documenting every single moment of one career? Which one, the hidden creation or the constant documentation, is truly more powerful in shaping our culture in the long run?
Something to mull on until our next deep dive.